The latest numbers from StatsCan shows household debt to annual disposable income has reached a new high of 164.6%. That means people are spending $1.64 for every dollar they are earning.
And that does not sound good.
No, well.
So it may also not be a surprise.
You don't have to be an economist.
No, it's a pretty frightening figure. So a lot of people will do what they can, and that is maybe as a last resort, go and try and reach some sort of deal, maybe hire a settlement company that promises to reduce your debt, but there are some unscrupulous companies apparently out there. It's prompted the Ontario government to look at some new regulations on the industry as a whole. So joining us in studio this morning, we have Jeffrey Schwartz, Executive Director of Consolidated Credit Counselling Services. It helps Canadians manage and consolidate their debt. Good to have you with us. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
This is pretty scary when I guess we look at some of the horror stories that are out there. What happens? A person realizes, you know, it's the last straw, I need some help. And there's a lot of companies that advertise, oh, we're going to solve your debt issues for you. We can reduce what you're going to pay by as much as, what, 70% I've seen?
I've seen 70, I've even seen 80, but
okay.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Is this for real? Can they do that?
Well, not really, no. In most cases, it's probably a lot less than they've got to pay a lot more than that, and it's a real concern. I mean, consumers are inundated with these messages, and they're not sure which ones are the legitimate ones and which ones are the scams. And they get brought into these things not really understanding what the companies
And the reason for that is we don't have sufficient regulation right now?
That's one of the reasons. I think they need to, like, we're in the nonprofit credit counseling industry, and we've got to be accredited, and we've got to answer to certain standards and ethics, and we are regulated from that perspective.
But how can someone say, I'm going to reduce your debt by 70%, you pay the money, and they don't deliver? There's not enough recourse to prevent that kind of thing? Like, what are the real horror stories you've seen or heard?
Well, what happens is, essentially, we've got people who are dealing with money problems, and they've had trouble making their payments on their credit cards or their debts. And then all of a sudden, someone's offering them the magic bullet. And ultimately, what happens with these companies is they go into these situations and say, okay, well, if you pay this amount of money for a period of time, you'll accumulate a certain amount, and then we'll try and settle with your creditors. Well, what happens if the creditors push back? If you're not hearing from your debtors from that perspective, then you're going to start to take the remedies that are available to you, like suing, garnishing your wages, all that sort of thing. And then the consumers don't know this going into it.
Is it fair to say that the consumers who seek this kind of help are not generally very sophisticated, not generally very well educated?
Well,
they feel disempowered. They don't feel like they have any power in any of this negotiation.
Well, I would suggest to you that maybe they are educated, but they're at their wits' end. There's a lot of stress involved around what they're doing. They've got collection calls happening all the time. So they're in a dire situation with respect to their personal finances. So they may not be thinking as clearly as they otherwise would in terms of another arrangement that they would make. So they're not asking the questions they need to. They're not doing the research that they need to where they otherwise might.
Okay, on research, on asking the right questions, and also at what point do you realize, I'm so far in debt, I need to get help? So when do you do that? When do you pick up the phone and make a call, and who do you call?
Well, the best thing, I mean, I'm a little biased as to what we do, but we provide unbiased information. We try and get to the root of the issue and try and solve the problem right then and there, but also hopefully prevent it from in the future.
Sure.
And those are the types of questions that you want to ask. If someone's offering you something that sounds too good to be true, like we're going to get you to reduce your debt by 80%, then chances are it is too good to be true.
So do you get people come to talk to you and they say, well, wait a minute, why should I listen to you? The guy down the street says you can get me 80% off.
Absolutely, and then we ask those same questions, and sometimes you've got to do a little research with respect to the Better Business Bureau, what kind of accreditation, what kind of certification these people, and what kind of advice they're offering you. Does it sound realistic? Because in a lot of cases, these other ones aren't. And you get down the road and you pay these huge fees, sometimes in the thousands of dollars, and they're not solving the issue that you have.
Okay, so you want to make sure the place you go to is accredited, has a good track record.
Yeah.
And then feasibly, what can be done? I mean, you can consolidate, which will save you money on interest for sure, and then what?
Well, there are some services that can provide you, but they have to go through the courts, like the trustee system, where they do a consumer proposal, where they can negotiate a settlement, if you will, on their debt, and you make payments over time. But that's done through the court system, and trustees are licensed to do that. With us, we're more involved with education and rehabilitation, but also lowering the interest rate so people can pay back their debts quicker, but they pay them back in whole.
Jeffrey Schwartz is the Executive Director of Consolidated Credit Counseling Services. Good to see you. Thank you for this.
Thank you. You're welcome.